So we're back solving number one. It's a little bit cut off, but we're rotating 90 degrees counterclockwise. I have the rule written up there at the top, and I wrote all the coordinates. Okay. Now, guys, on the practice worksheet, all I'm asking you to do is figure out what the coordinates of A prime, B prime, and C prime are, or whatever the image is. Okay. Now, I would say it'd be a good idea to graph it on Desmos, okay? So you don't have to. All you have to do is plug in the coordinates. But again, if you want to make sure that you're doing it correctly, graph it on Desmos. There's going to be a little part of common sense that says, you know what, this figure looks correct. It looks congruent. It's the same thing. It looks like we rotated it 90 degrees, okay? So for this, we are going to use this rule. So I'm going to change colors here. All right, so when we rotate that A coordinate 90 degrees, that means that 7 becomes negative, and the 2 moves into the second position. So the coordinate for A prime is negative 7, 2. All right. Then for B, it's going to be negative 5, 6, because we're changing that Y coordinate, putting it in the first position, making it negative, moving the 6 to the second position. So for B, it's going to be negative 5, 6. And then lastly, for C prime, that changes to negative 1 because that was a positive 1, and then we move that 4 into the second position. So those are the coordinates for A prime, B prime, and C prime. All right. Now, if we move on to here, let's do a separate one together. So guys, try and work on 2, and then I know it kind of skips some, but then we skip to 9 and 10. I want you to work on 9 on your own, and then we are going to do 10 together, okay? So check the notes key for numbers 2 and 9. So for number 10, we're rotating 180 degrees. So our rule for rotating 180 degrees is, and I'm going to write it over here in green, x comma y, and it changes to negative x, negative y. Okay? So that's the rule for rotating 180 degrees. Now, for this, I'm going to pause the video for a second and write down the coordinates. All right, so we're back. I wrote down all the coordinates. We have the rule up there. So for this, remember, all we're doing, these negatives mean that the sign changes. So if it's positive, it goes to a negative. It's negative, goes to a positive. But we're not changing the position. We're leaving them in the same position. So that negative 3, negative 5, when we rotate it 180 degrees, becomes 3, 5. All right. For our x coordinate, it becomes that 1 that is the x coordinate becomes negative 1, and then the negative 1, which is the y coordinate, becomes a positive 1. So we just switch the sign. Same thing for y. We have a positive 3 for x coordinates. That becomes a negative 3. We have a negative 3 for the y coordinates. That becomes a positive 3. Okay. And lastly, we have a negative 1 and a negative 7. So that's going to become a positive 1, positive 7. And now we have our coordinates for w prime, x prime, and y prime and z prime. So again, w prime is going to be 3, 5. X prime is going to be negative 1, 1. Y prime is going to be negative 3, 3. And z prime is going to be 1, 7. And again, you can check your answers and check it on Desmos. Guys, look at the notes key to see what it's going to look like when you graph it, because it definitely shows a better graph than what I can do here. Okay. So now let's move on to one that's rotating 270 degrees. So we're going to do number 11 together, and then I'm going to have you guys do the rest on your own. Check your answers on Canvas. Okay. So let me get this one set up. All right, guys. So like I said, I want to do number 11, and then I'll let you guys do number 12 on your own, and we'll talk about 13 and 14 because those are a little bit different. But for this one, all we're going to do is we put the y and put it in the first position, change the sign for the x coordinates. So that becomes 5, negative 4. The next one becomes negative 2, and then we change the x coordinate to be negative 6. Then the last one is negative 2 becomes the first one, and then negative 1 for the coordinate there in the second position. So